item on our agenda is approval of minutes. I've looked at them and they look fine to me. Our new members,
Same. I've looked at them. They look fine to me. I'll make a motion to,
a second.
second.
Okay, bring your microphones down. So I think these things are
Testing
working.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're on.
Okay, roll call, please.
Do we do?
For approval of minutes.
To approve the
I'm
minutes.
sorry. Yeah,
Call
sorry,
it.
just got back here.
Wake up.
I'm sorry.
We're moving on. Moving fast.
Tracy Eckhart. Aye. Kip Rodenberg.
Aye.
Yes.
Ted Carmichael.
Okay, new business. Okay, RZ 2104 for 302 Palmetto Avenue concerning an application to allow for lot 2 to become residential instead of commercial. I believe Mr. Leary gave us an opinion that I believe he recommends approval.
I do, Mr. Chairman, based on the fact that it probably was, should have been residential all along. And so this is kind of just cleaning it up.
Okay. Discussion. Ready for a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve RZ 21-04 for rezoning.
Second. Tracy. Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Carmichael.
Yes. Okay, it's gonna get a little more interesting. Second item, RZ 2101, for parcel. I'm not gonna read all the numbers, fronting the east side of Summit Street and the south side of South Prospect Street, concerning the rezoning application from multifamily residential to RV park PUD. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, before you ask for the applicant to make the presentation, just want to clarify that what we're doing tonight is codifying the changes that were approved at the last commission meeting. So it'll go in a final format to the city commission.
very good. Everybody understand that? Okay, so we're up for discussion. See, Mr. Kennedy is here
Want to do it like
again.
the last one without me, then it's fine by me.
Mr. Kennedy, are you the one that's gonna start us off on this with a
I think
20-minute
I'll be that
presentation
person.
again?
What's that?
With another 20-minute presentation?
Well, I actually did cut it short for you, believe it or not. That's the one. But I don't have my PowerPoint to do all over again. I apologize for the new arrivals, but doesn't seem we're set up for it anyway today, and could have moved it. I gotta get a projector, I guess, of my own. But what I would like to do is focus on the changes, and then of course recognizing we have a couple of new arrivals, maybe then take questions from them. But at the last meeting, I believe it was March 30th, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the PUD zoning subject to some changes to the development agreement. And those changes start on page 1 of 9 of the development agreement, which is actually an exhibit to the ordinance. And one of the key issues raised in order to make sure, I believe that current applicants or whoever's going to develop this property is serious, is that the primary amenity area will be part of phase 1 and will be completed before any RV sites actually get rented out. And so we made changes to paragraph C on that page, the phases of development. And make that language meet the requirements of the P and Z's recommendation. Phase 1 shall include, at a minimum, establishment of wetland tree preservation areas, wetland buffers, landscape buffers, the RV park areas, and a primary amenity area to include the clubhouse lounge area, laundry, bathroom, camp store, game room, arcade, picnic pavilion, and pool. So that language was added to the bill. Questions about that? I'll just move right on to page 3. Special conditions of the permitted use. There was a concern raised about primitive tent camping. So no one wanted to see that. It wasn't in their business plan, so they didn't have a problem with that. But we amended paragraph 2B to define what glamping means and cabin sites mean. And so we deleted that first phrase, tent sites, including glamping, to make it clear it's only glamping type sites. And then added language, glamping as used herein is understood to include safari and yurt-style tents owned and maintained by the RV park, set up on raised platforms in a semi-permanent fashion and accommodated with furniture, electricity, and other amenities. Glamping tents will not be occupied and shall be taken down in the event of hurricane warning being issued for the area. We did a minor adjustment there. Thanks to some input from the attorney, Robert Cole. Make it clear that they shall be taken down when there's a limit. And then again, on page 4 of 9, modular cabins and glamping sites. Took out the reference to tent just to make sure it's clear. We're not talking about regular tents, we're talking about glamping tents as defined previously. And then screening. There was a discussion about locating the screening away from the property line. I'll actually do that later, but this section talks about the northern boundary. Height along the northern boundary of the screening shall be 8 feet. And height at all other locations will be a minimum of 6 foot, maximum of 8 foot.
Question there, this is again
Yeah.
vinyl siding, not wood siding, correct?
Vinyl fencing is the plan.
Thank you.
Okay, while we're asking questions, then where is the fence going to be located? We have a 50-foot buffer, so,
That's on the next page,
okay,
page 5. That was one of the issues raised by this commission to move it 25 foot off the property line and put vegetated buffer between the fence and the property line. We did that on page 5 of 9.
okay, so it's basically gonna be in the middle of the 50-foot,
Buffer, yes, sir. Yes, sir. There
okay,
might have to be some
okay,
meandering because of geography and stormwater management issues. That'll get pinned down. We won't be able to do anything until you guys do a final site plan review.
because while we're into these details, we might as well hit it now. How will we prevent someone from walking along the shore and intruding on private property?
Well, I believe the fence is intended to go down to the water line. It's supposed to go all the way to the water line. I might have to do something a little different right after the water line.
Yeah, it should really extend into the water line, not necessarily a vinyl fence, but some sort of fencing, maybe 5-10 feet into the shoreline.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay, I imagine you could use some sort of chain link, but anyhow, we want to prevent.
I think part of the vegetation will be there, but also some type of fencing. We'll probably have to work with the DEP on what we're gonna do going into the water anyway, so.
Okay, so you agree that you're gonna take measures to do our best to ensure folks will not intrude along the shoreline onto private property.
One way or the other, yes, sir. That's in their best interest, so.
Okay,
And that's the property itself is a high bluff. So, I mean, it's a very steep drop to the water. So can't say won't happen, but I don't anticipate a lot of foot traffic in the water
Okay, again, we need to be very sensitive to the adjacent.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, yeah, that's good for their security as well. Works both ways. Then turning to page, I just kind of went over page 5.9. Within the 50-foot buffer area, there will be a 25-foot natural vegetation between the northern property line and the screening required under paragraph 6 above. Page 6 of 9, there was a request that we do an updated wildlife survey at the time we come back for final permitting. And add that language in at the top there. Access, and I have the revised site plan, kind of got our head of ourselves and getting some of the stuff out. So I'm not sure if you guys have a revised site plan. I think they
I
do.
think they do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
I don't know if anybody out here does this. It's, the only significant change is the secondary access, which we speak to in paragraph 16A at the bottom of page 6. For second sentence in that paragraph, secondary access point for ingress and egress of emergency vehicles and guest emergency exit only, not to be used by RVs of any type, will be located on Prospect Street frontage at least 150 feet from the nearest existing driveway on Prospect Street to the east. Golf carts equipped and operate in accordance with local and state laws may use this location for regular ingress and egress. And we've indicated a narrower golf cart path. The reason for that being we don't, by we, I mean, Moonshine Landing doesn't want golf carts going out on 17 to get into town. But they would like a lot of RVers to bring golf carts along as a means of transportation rather than getting in their RVs. So it would be designed so that it cannot be used by vehicles and only used by the golf carts.
Let me make sure I understand what I think I heard. So no vehicles other than golf carts will use the Prospect Street entrance other than emergencies or perhaps special situations. Is that
Yeah, there
correct?
has to be some kind of evacuation of the
Right.
car. But yes, but other than that, it's just
But
emergency.
as far as routine usage, like someone can't drive a vehicle in and out, and most certainly not the RVs.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Fire protection, the fire chief brought this up and we have no problem addressing it here. It would have to be addressed again, pinned down specifically when it comes to final site plan approval, but paragraph 18, we added that the owner developer is responsible for providing adequate on-site fire protection improvements to serve the project, which isn't really made a change, just took out what happened there. But then we shall include one fire hydrant outside the property proximate to the secondary emergency entrances and several hydrants inside the property. The number and location of fire hydrants inside the property, as well as required design, capacity, and location for the water supply and other fire protection improvements shall be determined at final plan approval. That is the end of the changes that we made based on our recommendations from this.
Have a couple of questions just to make sure I understand. We are gonna have quiet time. That's stipulated in the package.
Correct.
Normally 10 p.m. except for Friday and Saturday 11 p.m.
That's the way it's currently written, yes, sir.
Okay. We will not have no tent camping other than possibly glamping.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that we have stipulations in place that the RVs have sleeping quarters for all of the group. Is that correct? Or are we?
I'm not
We,
understanding. the question.
okay, we basically don't want people to come in there and use the place as a campsite.
For
So,
tents, for primitive tents. is that what you're saying?
as a, or tents, primitive camping or whatever. So we don't want somebody to come in with a small RV and pitch a tent and say, okay, we've got 6 other people in the tent. So we have some,
It's a specifically prohibited use right now.
okay, that is,
Under paragraph 3,
okay.
permitted open air tent camping or any
Just
any
wanted to-
non-transient residential occupancy other than.
Okay, so we have your assurance, thank you.
That's it.
Oh,
Paragraph 3 of page 3. I
we
may not
say-
know that.
Another item, we say maximum length of stay is 6 months, right?
Correct.
Is there anything to prevent somebody from leaving for a day and coming right back into the same place?
I would let the experience.
That would be our internal policy. We're not gonna allow that.
Okay, we need a stipulation that we can't play games with this, so,
I'm perfectly fine with that. Yes.
okay.
Yes, sir.
And
Can we get, add verbiage that, 6 months in any one calendar year? Is that,
no, I don't think we need to be that restricted. We just don't want somebody to set up basically a permanent home there. You know, if somebody wants to
Right.
leave for a week and come into a different site,
I understand what
I
you're
think
saying.
that would be
Yes.
fine, but we just don't want, we want to make sure that there's no way for someone to live there as a permanent home.
I'm perfectly fine adding that.
Okay, we're on the same page. So we probably do need some language to reflect that.
Have. Under prohibited uses, all other uses not specifically listed as permitted use are prohibited, including not limited to permitted open air and tent camping in any non-transient residential occupancy other than at the designated caretaker's residence. So they can't set up permanent residency at this location in that provision. How much more specific what's in your, I'm not sure how to word this without.
Seems pretty clear. That's pretty clear to me.
Okay, I'll accept that. And before this place is put into service, we're gonna have certain amenities already in place.
All amenities will be.
All amenities, is that stipulated?
It is, yes, sir. That was one of the changes that we added
Okay,
and reviewed.
very good.
I have a question regarding the amenities too. There's a restaurant. Will this restaurant be open to the public or only to park guests?
At present, it's only be open to park guests or people coming from the water.
Okay, so then you could have outside guests arriving by boat.
Once they have a pier, that's.
Okay, all right, well, that was my next, again, question, if that's the only.
The pier is technically not a part of phase 1, but it could be. That's if the.
And in quickly looking at the site map, and again, it's kind of small, so forgive me because these eyes are old. Are you gonna have a boat ramp on the property?
No, sir.
No, so the boat ramps would be Crescent City use boat ramps, and then they move the vessel or whatever, jet skis, whatever,
Correct,
over to the property.
correct, yes.
Are there any covered boat slips, places that people can rent?
No, sir.
None of that is
There's going to
planned,
be boat slips, but not,
not covered, or lifts,
correct.
okay? Alcohol on the property, what is the deal there?
Beer and wine.
Okay,
And it's specifically limited to beer and wine.
all right. And the convenience store that's along with it, I think I read, will there be package sales out of there of beer and wine also? Or will that just be the restaurant? You said probably?
Probably. yes.
Okay, thank you.
Package sales is part of a 2 COP license.
Okay.
That's-
All right, thank you.
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, staff has reviewed this with respect to the comprehensive plan and land development code, and it does meet both of those documents, and you recommend to the city commission for approval. And then now would be the time to open it up for public comment.
Okay, Mr. Leary, so you're saying you do endorse the very extensive analysis by Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Comments?
evening, Jessica Gow, Paul Law Firm, 149 South Woodford Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida. Good to see you all again. I wanted to start by thanking the developer and their team. The changes that we've seen are awesome. I think they're giving the residents comfort. My list is much smaller than it was last time. There's only 2 things that we brought up as something that the residents would like to see. Specifically, I'm representing the Schofields, adjacent property owners. That didn't make it into the changes, and we wanted to see if the planning board wanted to include them. The first is we discussed kind of the noise impact on the residents along the northern property line. And we discussed, currently it reads, an 8-foot vinyl fence. We would like to consider an 8-foot masonry wall to help block the sound impacts of the adjacent property owners. And then the second was just that the residents had requested the potential review of the quiet times to include at 10 p.m. on weekends as well. So I just wanted to restate those for the record. Thank you.
Okay, discussion about,
You want to wait till all the comments, Mr. Chairman, then we can discuss the recommendation or.
not the way I like.
Okay, well, go ahead. Do it. You're the chairman.
Yes, no, ready?
Chairman.
Okay, I just want to make sure we know what we're hearing. The only objection I heard was quiet time possibly decreased on Friday and Saturday instead of 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. Was that the concern?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted, was the clarification. So thank you. Next.
Hello, I wasn't going to speak, but I changed my mind real quick. My name is Beth Roush. We are the adjacent property that was previously mentioned. My husband and I live at 533 South Prospect Street. This proposed development is right next door, running the length of our property down the driveway to the lake. I've spoken twice here at planning and zoning meetings where this company presented its concept, and although it appears they did address a few of our concerns, which we appreciate very much, and it may be a moot point at this point, I'm just here to say that we prefer if it was built somewhere else. Again, I know it's probably a moot point. We've lived here full-time for 6 years. At the last meeting, when I and others stated that we were drawn to Crescent City for the peace and quiet and for the charm, for whatever reason, we were told that we were selfish. And I guess because we're relatively newbies, that came out. Many of us were just kind of taken aback by this comment. Why would it matter if we've been here 3 years or 30, if we just want the best for the community? I would hope that anyone could be heard and could state their opinion without it being kind of denounced. I had explained at the meetings that I mentioned my husband and I are both 3rd generation Crescent Cityers. When he was young, he often visited family who lived on Clifton Road, and they were well known in the town. My great aunt and uncle's home was over on Main Street, right next to like an empty lot, some orange trees. Mike and I remembered, and we returned here, mostly for the small town feel and charm. So I just didn't understand what was wrong with wanting to keep the charm. There are points, lights, traffic, noise. Again, I appreciate your taking these things into consideration. We drove out to see the place, and it just didn't live up to the photos in our opinion. But all that's, water under the bridge now. It seems we also have enough of these RV parks, so why do we need another one? But again, I'm not going to go there. I just mainly wanted to state that we're not sure that this would be aesthetically pleasing or beneficial to the town. And also, no matter how long we've lived here or where we moved from, we can care about maintaining the integrity and the charm of our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Me and Simpson were new to Crescent City. We're on 924 Reed Avenue. We own an RV lot in Willaca, so we're RVers. We work full time. I wanted to address the issue where I'm hearing there's a concern about quiet time, keeping the integrity.
Ma'am, if you.
Quiet time, keeping the integrity. Friday night here at the house up until midnight or a little after, I couldn't figure out where the party was. It was just coming from, like, Stella, from every direction. You didn't know if they were pulling you or not. I mean, I didn't know, is that crazy? So there was a real party going on in several locations. Had nothing to do with RVs and RV park. And it certainly didn't stop at 10. And it was on the weekend and it didn't stop at 11. So my question is the enforcement. If you're wanting to enforce this, we need to start enforcing the other. I don't think the RVers are gonna be a problem. I think they're good people. They're family people, they're the families, and they have a good time. But whatever was going on Friday night, that was crazy. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Stephen Glenn, 325 South Prospect Street, Crescent City. I did not know about the previous meeting. That the notice came out the day of the meeting, and I've never seen a notice on the property. I think usually isn't it posted somewhere on the property?
We do.
In the past, it has been.
We do on what's required in the paper by statute. In the paper circulation, that's like daily news because it's not a Crescent City Journal. And we also post it on our website. But there's no requirement to post the property.
I worried about generators. No generators. And I'm worried about storage of RVs. Are people going to be living in there? Boats? Like it's going to be storage.
Storage inside the park.
Well, where is it going to be stored? You can have another place to store it,
Hopefully.
hopefully. Where would that
Someday,
be?
I have no idea.
But not
We don't
on
have
the
any,
property.
we have no initial plans right now to have, we're not going to be offering RV storage inside the park or boat storage, period. And
How
it's not
about,
in our, development agreement at all.
how about flushing of the tanks?
All the sites will be full hookups, so they'll be able to dump their tanks before they leave.
See, I was-
And that goes into, sure, no, that's fine, no problem. That goes into, our sewer system, that lift station that goes into the city sewer. We're connected to city water and sewer. We'll be.
Mr. Chairman, one other thing, the notification, all property owners within 400 feet of the property boundary were notified by mail.
Okay, everybody understand that?
I'm just out of the area, and I've lived there for 38 years, so I'm nice and peaceful, and quiet. I've enjoyed it, and I hate to see this coming in. And I hope that you realize what you are inflicting on us after so many years of just pleasant living. We're going to have all this noise coming in, even though it's going to be controlled, it's still going to be noise. And I'm sure that the RVs are going to wind up going up and down Prospect because they'll get lost when they turn around. And the golf carts, more golf carts, and I'm sure motorcycles will use the golf cart lane too. So I'm sorry to see it come in. Sorry I wasn't here to influence you earlier.
And you know, the planning commission is just a recommending body. The city commission has the final decision.
Why would you then change from from R3, which would be, I think, a better use of the land to have permanent residents coming in, building homes or condos? Those are my thoughts.
My name is Joseph Schofield. I'm at 517 South Prospect. If you look at your plat map that's been provided, we're about 125 to 150 feet to the north of the property line. So you have the Roushes, you have the Jensens, and you have us. And the only reason I'm speaking is to address the request for the masonry wall. They had put in vinyl 8 feet. Last time we had mentioned, hey, maybe want to look at 12 to 15 feet masonry. They come back and said that would be expensive to do 12 to 18 feet, which is understandable. We conceded 8 feet. We think that would be sufficient. The reason for the masonry, and I'm sure we're all familiar with driving down the highways, you see the sound walls on either side of the highways. Transmission loss through masonry is a much higher ratio than through vinyl fencing. Vinyl fencing has a very low transmission loss ratio. The masonry tends to stop it better. Mr. Application. But one of the review criteria, I think, for the master plan is the effect on surrounding properties. And in this case, being a surrounding property, we've talked about, and they've accommodated a lot of our requests. They've been very cordial about it, as a matter of fact. And so this is the only other one than the other Jessica mentioned that is a major issue, because if they impact our quiet enjoyment of our homes and our property, then they haven't met the requirement of the effect, minimizing the effect on adjacent properties. And that's all we're asking. It's no different than having a lift station on the property, no different than putting in fire hydrants. This is simply a cost of doing business if they're going to have it located there. And that's the reason we're asking for masonry. I just wanted to clarify that so it was understood clearly.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that. I understand that they think that is going to hold back some of the sound. And just like the concrete walls that you see on the highways, yes, I do believe that mitigates the sound for those people that are very close. I also know from experience that makes the sound jump. And we're talking a lot of noise, which I don't think you're going to have from this RV park. But my experience in living a mile away from Interstate 4 for many years is that once that went up, a road that I didn't hear suddenly became very noisy because that sound bounced off those walls. Now we're not talking interstate noise, and I really don't anticipate the campground being noisy. It's just my observations.
Let me make a comment, if I may. Number one is, my understanding is we're going to maintain natural growth in the buffer zone, hopefully relatively high. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It'll
So
be
that-
untouched, and then there are some areas that there are gaps, if you will, in the vegetation in that first 25 feet. And then that will be filled with this tall of indigenous type species.
We would appreciate it if you would, do your best to ensure that we do have a natural buffer. Higher the better, and thicker the better. When it comes to noise transmission, I live on the lake. And unfortunately, most of the noise travels across the lake. That buffer is not going to really help much of anything. I live half a mile from Three Bananas, and if I go out on my porch, I frequently hear very distinctly and relatively loud noise coming from there. So that's just something that those of us who live on the lake, we have to understand it has to be shared. We have some rights, but we don't own it. Come on.
If I may. We're not arguing against.
I didn't mean to sound argumentative at all. If I did, I apologize.
From both of them. I've done sound work for 20 years. I understand what you're saying, but I also understand that a change is coming, and while we're not opposing the change, we do expect the commission and especially the applicant, who the onus is on, to ensure that our quiet living and property rights are not disturbed. So I hear 3 bananas too. I probably am about the same distance, but you know what? It's already existing. It's there. This isn't there yet. They can mitigate that impact on us. That's all we're asking.
I think that's a very valid request, and from what I'm hearing, these folks are trying their best to mitigate things for us. So thank you for your comments. And again, I don't mean to be argumentative with you. Yes, you may.
Patrick Ryan Gilmore, 14991 Northeast Jacksonville Road, Citrus, Florida, 32113. Of course, I'm with Moonshine Landing Development Corporation. With regards to the masonry wall, I spoke with, and I wish our engineer was going to be here tonight, but he called me on Friday and he got put in quarantine for COVID, so he wasn't able to join us. But we had talked with this, and yes, the expense of engineering and the masonry wall is why we've asked to not have to do the masonry wall and stick with the vinyl wall. He also said that the vinyl wall, because it's hollow on the interior of it, that it actually helps absorb, if you will, noise. And that he felt that the refraction of noise against the wall could then echo off the lake and make things worse than with the vinyl fence. Another thing that one of my business partners thought of, and I was going to throw out to y'all, is we could do a berm, if you will, in between the fence within that vegetative buffer. Okay, so that, and we could do that as tall as the fence, so you really wouldn't even see the fence. And the fence would then, it would give us our security to keep people in and nobody coming in from the outside. But it would also help with sound. So if y'all are okay with us putting the berm inside the 25-foot vegetative buffer, we would be willing to do that.
Take out trees in order to put that.
I feel like, no. You're familiar with it. There is kind of that old roadway, or they know it, you know, for their hunters and everything that's in that buffer area. I think there's only really about 15 feet or so of vegetation, and then there's that open area.
That's just in that one portion.
Yeah, so we would leave as much of, I don't want to take out any trees here. Keep the existing, any of the existing landscape buffer that's there. So we could do the berm. If there is a tree that's in the way, I'd be happy to get with you about it. You okay leaving it? And we'll berm up to it and then continue to berm from the other side of the tree. That way we can save the trees.
Will you have we want to be rational when we're discussing options. Will you have the fill on site to create the berm without added?
That's what I'm hoping, because we do have to put that swale in, okay? So our goal is we can take the material out of the swale and then just basically turn it up, leave us 3 feet or so to put a fence in and be able to maintain, you know, both sides of it. And then have the berm on the other side of the fence, and then you have the 15 feet or so or landscape buffer after that.
And then that would offset your cost of having a hole that you're at. And
Help you out here. Partners to discuss this with me, but I want to help my client out here a little bit. If we're gonna have it burn, I would rather have it as an an option, not a mandatory requirement. I'm not sure you can do an 8-foot berm in a 15-foot section. To get up to that height, it'd have to be a stabilized berm. I think you're looking at a little more space than 10 to 15 feet wide. So I would like, you can put that in as an option, and then we'll be pinned down at final site plan review, but I would hate to try to commit to something that's not been engineered and not movable.
And I think if I can, if you want me to come up with, well, I think not before first reading, absolutely. Third. But probably by second reading, we could get a concept of the slope. It's probably 4 to 1, see what could be done.
We have to have some idea, some assurance before we say sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
I mean, I can't take up 30 feet of real estate to put in a buffer. So if I can get enough height out of a nominal amount of space, then we'd be.
Mr. Kennedy, can you help me with a clarification on this? I want to make sure I've got this right.
Sure.
I'm looking at the map, orientation north. I've got South Prospect Street where the turn starts. And then my presumption is that Mr. and Mrs. Roush's property starts at that location and goes down to the lake. Is that a good general
Yeah, approximately that.
observation?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then we have this 20-foot landscape buffer that your client just mentioned. Then another 50-foot setback, right? So now we're talking 70 feet,
No,
It
it's
includes
50 foot total.
Yeah.
Includes the 20-foot.
includes the 20 foot. Okay, so that's my question. And then the next space are back-end RV trailers. Is that what goes there?
RV sites.
RV sites. And that would be, if you will, just to the west of the lift station. So really down towards the actual Roush property, or I would say homestead, home. We have the bioswale, which is a pretty big area, and then there's cabins, tent cabins, and that, so there's no RVs down that far towards the lake, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are you still commenting for us, Mr. Kennedy?
No, I'm trying to find where this burn thing is gonna get real, how we put it in here.
I
Excuse me,
I
excuse me,
personally
guys.
agree with you that should be an option, and the thing I want to emphasize again is that we would like thick and high vegetation.
I think we should specify Florida native plants.
That'll be part of the final site approval, Mr. Chairman, and I agree, staff will do that. And I agree too, having forestry background, I can tell you, when you put a berm and you put dirt on around trees, generally it has a tendency to kill them. So you don't lose what you've got there. And, you know, from a land use standpoint, I think the vinyl with additional vegetation on both sides would be long run a better sound buffer.
Certainly makes sense to me. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm still just using space.
Okay, anyone else? We,
If anybody wants to come drive down my driveway and see what we're talking about, you're welcome to. Right behind the kangaroo, straight there. Come on.
okay, is there any additional input? Anyone else? Okay, the only thing that left that I see we really need to discuss a little bit is quiet time that was raised as an issue. My own opinion is that the 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday is a reasonable request, because I think that's something that we're already going to have some noise from Three Bananas as it expands. They are going to be open that late many times. The noise travels on the lake, and the RV park is really not going to add a lot of detriment, in my opinion. Now, Other comments?
I agree with that.
I agree. Friday and Saturday nights, again, I'm not sure there'd be much difference between the 10 and 11. Just one quick question, Mr. Kennedy, if I may, with special events at the park, I understand that they would be exempt from special event permitting from the city, correct? But that the noise times on their special events would still fall within these restrictions, right? Even if there was a big whatever, special event happening at the park, that 11 PM on Friday and Saturday would still be the quiet time.
Correct. And then just to clarify, the city's current noise ordinance, after 10 o'clock, it's the same for commercial and residential, the noise levels that are required. So they would, even though they might still be open, they'd be subject to the, so they're gonna have to start winding things down after 10 o'clock to meet the noise ordinance requirements, the rest of the city, as they're current.
We also agreed to no live music or anything after 10 o'clock either.
Get them to where they're heading towards being done at 11 rather than 11:30, 12.
Mr. Gilmore, I didn't really understand what you said. Come on up and speak if you would.
Patrick Gilmore. We had agreed in the last meeting to end any live music that we had in our restaurant area. That would end at 10 o'clock on
Okay.
weekends. So that, to help with any noise levels.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. O'Leary, what type of,
Mr. Chairman, the proper process at this point would be for a motion for approve, to recommend approval or denial to the city commission. That's what's been.
I'll be happy to make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
No, I wasn't saying, you have to make. the motion.
Okay, I move,
Right.
I move that the property for this case be accepted for rezoning from multifamily to RV park PUD and it be heard before the commission.
I'll second that motion for approval. Just to clarify,
roll call, please?
Roll call. Ms. Eckert,
Aye.
Skip Levenberg,
I,
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Veronica.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know your last name.
Glover.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Ms. O'Leary.
I don't vote.
You know.
I didn't put you in there anyway.
He's already had his vote.
That's right.
so just a clarification, this now goes to the city council, right?
Yes, I will
Where-
present to you tonight. It will go to the city council.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy,
Two
appreciate it.
hearings there.
Okay. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.